Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Film for Fans podcast, your home for movie news, reviews, and movie fan views. That's right. This is the podcast from movie fans for movie fans. I am your host, Ryan Dunlevy, and I am joined once again by the brand new Seattle Mariner retro hat clad Rob Dunham.
It's blue, it's yellow, it's coming for you. I don't know.
I feel like Ken Griffey Sr. is about to come out of the bleachers right now.
Yeah, man. This reminds me of the days when the kid was hitting home runs back in the early days when Pops and Junior were on the same team.
Oh, yeah.
But this is not a baseball podcast.
Yes. If you do like our movie podcast, we ask that you rate, subscribe, and share it with people. If you do, all of your dreams will come true.
Oh, wow. He went positive this week.
Yeah,
that's great.
Positive this week.
And if you don't, I will come and take all of the cords out of your charging blocks and bury them in your backyard.
See, I was trying to start the podcast off on a positive note, and Rob Dunham comes in and just wrecks it right from the beginning.
You got to have good cop, bad cop. Classic.
Yes. Classic movie, the good cop, bad cop strategy.
Yes.
All right. Well, we have got a great show. We're going to talk about Ashley Judd's harrowing experience in the Congo, mission changes for Mission Impossible 7, and some fun, nice, light stories from Jessica Chastain, Robin Williams, and the like. We'll debate DiCaprio's best roles and what are the best movie monologues. That, and of course, our watch list. All right, Rob, you ready to get started?
Let's roll that film, as they say in the movie business.
All right, so we'll kick it off with what I think is really, it's an incredible story. And that's a story about Ashley Judd. So if you haven't heard about this story, Ashley Judd had a grueling 55-hour rescue from the Congo. She was apparently hiking out in the jungle with a bad headlamp, did not see where she was stepping, tripped over a tree and shattered her leg out in the middle of the jungle, and had to go on an absolutely crazy journey to try and get back. She had to rely on a number of locals to literally carry her out in a makeshift tent thing that they were trying to drag her out on. She was riding, on pothole covered streets on the back of a motorcycle. They had to reset her leg multiple times. Just an absolutely crazy story. Rob, what did you think of when you saw this?
This has to be a movie. It seems unbelievable. It's so out there as a story. It's incredible that somebody went through this and made it, and it made me think there are probably people who have been in similar situations who didn't make it, who we never hear about. But the fact that there was someone there to basically be with her, I think they said one person was with her for 5 hours, just keeping her legs straight.
Yeah.
Until they were found by anybody else.
Yeah.
Which is nuts.
That's crazy.
And the names of the people, Papa Gene, Maradona, we've got all kinds of cool characters in this too.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really interesting to see someone who is known for being such a big star and basically having everything, being so helpless,
mm-hmm.
and needing just the kindness of strangers in order to survive.
Yeah, this is kind of like the nightmare scenario where something like this happens to you out in the middle of nowhere. And this is exactly what happened to her. I've been in the jungle. I've been in the safaris in Africa. I've been out in the middle of nowhere sometimes. And it's, you wonder what it would be like. And so just to have her experience that, especially because her leg was in really, really bad shape. She ended up in an ICU in South Africa because there wasn't even a hospital in the Congo that could actually had the technology to be able to help her out. So, it's an incredible journey. She has nothing but amazing things to say about the people of the Congo, and specifically the people who were able to get her to safety.
Yeah,
So
well, we're glad that she's okay, and hopefully this kind of story maybe motivates some people to step out and go the extra mile for somebody else, even if they're not a famous movie star, because odds are that a lot of people who helped her had no idea.
yeah, absolutely. And she posted a bunch of photos from the journey, and they're really incredible. They're absolutely unreal to look at. So, yeah. So best recovery, Ashley. And I mean, you've been through something that most people will never have to go through, thankfully. And it's an incredible show of strength there to get through that. So hopefully your recovery is quick.
I want to point out I'm very proud of you that you did not introduce that segment by saying breaking news.
but now, like, haven't you like defeated the purpose since you brought it up anyway?
That's what I'm here for.
Oh man. All right. So moving on to our next story. This is kind of interesting. Of course it's like tangentially COVID related because everything is at this point. But Mission Impossible 7 and 8 filming development update, and that they are now not going to be filmed back to back. That was the original plan, was that they were just going to roll right from filming the end of 7 right into production on number 8. We've seen this a lot in a bunch of franchise movies. When they get to the end, they split the last 2 up. They do them together. So this is becoming a more common thing. So you get everyone there, you get everything done quicker. But it looks like that is now not going to happen, as with the delays for Top Gun Maverick, Tom Cruise will now actually have a promotional schedule, which is going to interfere with production on 8. So there's going to be some delay on that. But Rob, what do you think about delaying production of a new movie for promotional purposes for Tom Cruise?
I think if Tom Cruise was really Ethan Hunt, he would find a way to make both things happen at the same time. So I'm a little
for real
disappointed,
seriously,
shattering my suspension of disbelief with this one, because he would absolutely be doing interviews and then flying 3 hours to be wherever else he needs to do whatever else he needs to do, because he's a super spy. I mean,
yeah.
I'm pretty sure he's done like kind of the exact same thing in other Mission Impossible movies. So the fact that he's not willing to commit to it in real life is very disappointing. But yeah, to be more serious, I do think that, and I know that movie stars feel this way because they express it all the time, that sometimes they feel like there's too much when it comes to publicity and promoting a movie, and there's not enough time set aside to be working on other things when they have to be talking about the thing they just did. And I'm sure for him at this point, having it be waiting so long to come out, he's got to be frustrated to have to go do this and not be filming like he had planned to be doing.
My question is, when did they start letting Tom Cruise promote his movies again? I thought there was like a moratorium on him being out in public, being able to say whatever he wants. I thought we all decided that was a terrible idea.
I think they removed all the couches from all the interview sets, so I think he'll be okay.
I guess, too much Scientology gotten into him. I wonder if he's backed off the dosage of Scientology.
It could be his Mission Impossible.
Yeah. So, yeah, I do think that's interesting. I mean, I'm personally quite pleased that there are multiple Mission Impossibles coming, but the sooner the better. Now, what's interesting is they did not actually back up the release date for number 8, which is still scheduled for 2022. So apparently they don't think it's going to be enough of a delay to warrant moving the film, at least at this point. So we shall see. All right, moving on to our next story. This was one that you brought to the podcast attention, Rob, and this is kind of a cool story. It's a little Robin Williams legacy. So, Rob, do you want to lead out on this one?
Yeah. So this story is actually not like brand new. It came out soon after Robin Williams passed away. but I don't think it's been really noticed by a whole lot of people because it was the first time I had heard of it. Jessica Chastain, the actress, went to Juilliard for school to study to be an actress and study in the theater program. And her family did not have a lot of resources in order to make that happen. And Juilliard is not a cheap school by any stretch of the imagination. And she revealed back in 2014 that Robin Williams actually helped provide for her education, because Robin Williams took I think she said he took a student every couple of years and paid for their entire education. And she was chosen for that the one year. And without that support, she said it was likely that she would not have been able to accomplish what she was trying to do and finish her schooling. And I think that looking at it now in 2021, it's even more of a crazy story because she's gone on to do so much more stuff since 2014. Like it mentioned a couple movies in there that she had been in, but she's gone on to do so much more. And to think that that wouldn't have been possible without his help is kind of a crazy thing.
Yeah. And I think what's cool about this story is that anytime you see someone succeed, it's always nice there's always something about giving back at that point, about investing in the next generation, about passing along what you know and what you've learned, and providing that ladder up for other people. And so it's a cool legacy for Robin Williams to know that he helped specifically create an actress who's been a big part of the next generation of actresses. And so anytime that you have an opportunity to do, I think it's just a great life lesson. Anytime you succeed at something or you're at a good position, that you take the opportunity to help those coming behind you. I think that's just really cool.
Yeah, and I know that when Chadwick Boseman passed away as well, there was a similar story around him and Denzel Washington, and some help he gave him to get into a theater program in London as well too. So there are other stories like this all around Hollywood where aspiring talents have, been noticed by someone and helped out. And I'm grateful for those works by other people who are established, because they've definitely brought us some great performances and definitely enhanced the craft.
Yeah, for sure. And so we always like to see that. All right, so moving on to our last story. The Mortal Kombat trailer has dropped for the new generation of Mortal Kombat movies. And this I just found really interesting because, Mortal Kombat was always that video game when we were growing up that was kind of controversial, that you really like to play. It was the super violent video games. And this was right during like the height of the violent video games causes issues type rhetoric, and Mortal Kombat was one of those video games they talked about. But it's actually gone on to have a decently long run in movies with various iterations. And so the fact that they're trying again to bring back Mortal Kombat, I think is fascinating. What do you think? Do you think Mortal Kombat still has relevance in terms of the movie industry for today?
Well, the thing is that the previous iterations are not very good. So
yes, this is true.
There's kind of a blank slate to provide something that's worthwhile. And I think from watching the trailer, it looks better than what we've seen before. Yeah. Now, there's no guarantee that it's going to end up being better than what we've seen before because trailers can be deceiving, as we all know. But I was pretty impressed by the action from the trailer. It looked over the top. It's rated R, and they said they're leaning into that. It's got a red band trailer, so that's how you know movies got like serious stuff going on. I think the one scene that kind of captured it for me is when Sub-Zero like cut some guy's throat and then the blood froze and he used it to stab him.
Yeah, that's like an extra insult to injury. I mean, seriously, you get stabbed with your own blood.
Yeah,
I mean, come on.
Yeah, that's Mortal Kombat to me, over the top.
Yeah,
action. And I still think that it's a game that people play. So it's not like it's not like it's something that was a franchise back in the 80s or 90s and then no one has heard of it since. Like there are still versions of it coming out.
Mhm.
There's still hype around it. People still are excited to play it. So I think there is an audience for it.
Yeah, and judging by some of the actors they put in the movie too, I think uh, there's a better chance than what we've seen with some of the other movies that it's actually a decent quality. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm cautiously optimistic that this will be a decent film. So I think this comes out April 19th, if I'm remembering that correctly. So yeah, it should be fun and interesting to see what they do with this iteration of Mortal Kombat. All right. So now we get on to our discussion items, and I found this article on Entertainment Weekly that was ranking every single one of Leonardo DiCaprio's films. And I've known he's been around for a long time, but seeing this list just reminded you of how long and how many films he has been in for such a long time for a guy who's not that old. And he has had quite a career. And so I thought it would be fun to talk about to kind of get our different opinions about what our favorite DiCaprio roles are, and see where we're the same and where we're different on this one. So um, so let's pick a few. So Rob, what do you think? I'll let you go first. What is one of your favorite DiCaprio roles?
So I have my top 5 in order.
Okay.
And I wildly disagree with the list. So
Yeah. Uh-huh.
but for me the best I've seen him is the movie The Revenant,
Mm.
which was just an absolute insanity of commitment to a performance. Like this guy literally got violently ill for this role by actually being out in these crazy conditions. Like it wasn't on a soundstage. He was out in this insane weather. He like literally climbed into the carcass of an animal. Like that was all real. Um, the stuff that he did for this movie was nuts.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I thought that he portrayed the character he was portraying really well too, and was a great counterpoint to Tom Hardy's rival character in the movie. So yeah, The Revenant for me was my favorite performance of his. I just love that movie in general, but I thought that the movie would not have been as good without Leonardo DiCaprio's performance in it, and I think that he was well deserving of the awards he won for it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, just the sheer insanity of what he put himself through. I mean, this was by far his greatest commitment to any role that he's ever done. Now, I would probably differ that I don't know that it's his best role, but it certainly is the one that took the most effort, that he went the most over the extra mile. And I mean, it's just a ridiculous performance. I mean, between what he did and with Alejandro Inarritu and filming in natural light and all, like just the crazy lengths they went to make this movie, it was just insane. So yeah, if you haven't seen it, it's a difficult movie, but it is really fantastic. Must see.
All right,
So,
you wanna go with one?
yeah. So, and I'll start out with like this. I did a 180 on DiCaprio. I was not a big fan of him early in his career. I didn't particularly like him as an actor. Um, so there was kind of two movies, and both of them are on my list. But there are two movies back to back that really turned me around, and they came out like right near each other, and that was Blood Diamond and The Departed. So I will start out. I'll just say I'll go with Blood Diamond. Just the role he played as a South African diamond trader, and the lengths he goes to try and um, get. I keep forgetting that his name, but to get him to safety and kind of playing both sides, and you're never quite sure of his character's motivation, and just like he did such an amazing role in that movie. He was so believable, and it was such a good job of acting that I started coming around on him with that particular movie.
Yeah, I think it was Digimon Hansu was
Yes, I
the
can never pronounce his
star.
name.
Yeah,
From
yeah,
Gladiator.
yeah.
Yeah.
For me, there are quite a like you said, it's kind of crazy the amount of work he's put in because there are a lot of really good movies. So I would say that Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I think, is up there
Yeah.
as one of his best performances, and I think it's for an entirely different reason than what I mentioned with The Revenant. I think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is so good because he portrays an actor like with real honesty, like an actor who is not always satisfied with what he accomplishes, who gets frustrated just like a normal person would get frustrated when they're not able to do their job perfectly. There's a scene in this trailer where he basically gets into an argument with himself about not being able to remember his lines, and there's a decent amount of profanity in it, but it is hilarious because it's like seeing a guy have a mental breakdown right in front of you, but he does it so believably. Like, it's over the top, but you can imagine an actor who's frustrated doing that. Like, I could see it. I could see someone doing that. And I think probably the most compelling and grounded moment of that movie, which drives home this point, is when he's talking to the little girl actress about acting.
Yeah.
And she's reading a book. He's reading a book about a cowboy, and she asks him if it's a good book. And he goes into this little monologue, which we're going to talk about monologues a little later, spoiler alert. But he goes into this little monologue about the story and about how, sometimes things don't go the way you want and people don't have use for you anymore. And you can tell the longer he goes on talking about it, the more he's realizing he's talking about himself. And he kind of just has this breakdown in front of this girl. But it's so real, and she's so comforting and there for him.
Mm-hmm.
And he manages to turn it around and absolutely kill the scene. And they tell him he did a good job, and he's just like, And then he gets to kill Nazis with a flamethrower, so that's always a bonus.
Yeah. I so love that scene. Oh, it's so good. Yeah, I'm glad.
Everybody okay with there? Well, the Nazis aren't.
No, the hippies.
Yeah,
the Nazis was in
the hippies aren't.
That's so good. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the scene with the little girl, because I think that was the one that I thought he did the most subtly brilliant job of acting, because he's trying to tell the story of the book, but he's actually telling his own story, and to watch him realize that in the moment is, while trying to contain it, is just subtly brilliant acting. And so that really is a scene where that exemplifies how good of an actor he is.
I think that just that statement speaks to why he is a good actor, and it also might speak to why we didn't notice it earlier, because I think subtlety is a hard thing to appreciate.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when you're younger and just growing in your skill, I think it's something that can be maybe viewed as just inexperience or not being fully into a role, when maybe all along he's been good at acting.
Mm-hmm.
And we just didn't realize what was going on.
Yeah.
Do you have another one you're thinking of?
Yeah, I have to go to The Departed. The Departed is just an amazing film on basically every single level. But DiCaprio's role in that is just fantastic, because he's the guy who's playing both sides. He's the guy who is undercover, who is a cop, who's pretending not to be a cop, who's in with the criminals, and just his ability to, play both sides, play that role of both sides. And this, in particular, the scenes he had with his psychiatrist were fantastic, because it's just like the moments when it gets to him and the moments where he just needs somebody to trust. And he plays it with a level of desperation to his character, both skill and desperation in his acting that just really make the film. I mean, it's full of tremendous acting performances from Jack Nicholson to Mark Wahlberg and Matt Damon. I mean, the whole thing is great, but I think he has a standout role in that movie.
Yeah, I've got to mention just one more. There are several actually that I could think of, but one more that I can't let the segment end without mentioning is Shutter Island, because Shutter Island is, I think, my second favorite movie of all time. And the one of the biggest reasons is his performance, because he plays this broken man like to an absolute T, to perfection. Someone who has had a psychotic break and has no concept of reality. And he plays this person earnestly, like the guy he plays it so well that you don't see what's going to happen in the movie happening until it's happening. And I'm not going to give it away, but we'll talk again about his performance in that role when we get to the monologues part too. But yeah, his performance in Shutter Island is fantastic as well.
Yeah, and he's just had so many good roles over the years that it's hard to catalog all of them. I thought he was great in The Great Gatsby. Of course, we didn't even talk about Inception, which is one of my all-time favorite movies, and he's inseparable from that movie. He's really had a great career. Especially, we talked about this a little bit when we talked about Will Smith and Tom Cruise, is that how the ability to have hits outside of franchises. Well, Leonardo DiCaprio has really never been a franchise guy.
Yeah.
And yet he's put together 3 decades worth of hit movies. And almost everything he's in now has been good. I mean, and Catch Me If You Can, there's another one where he was fantastic in, especially because he was able to use like the boyish part of his demeanor and his looks in that one, trying to play someone who was much younger. So yeah, lots of.
Yeah, it turns out Leo's a decent actor, I guess.
Yeah. I think it was just the whole when I was growing up, middle school, high school, like the whole teen beat Leonardo DiCaprio thing just gets to you after a while. So I think I had some like negative things, and then like Titanic and the whole.
Yeah, when Titanic comes out when we're like 14 and 15 years old.
Yeah.
That's not the right time for that kind of movie to come out for boys that age. If you want them to appreciate someone's performance.
Yeah. Not to mention the very strange, very 90s Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, it's quite the work of art. We'll put it that way. It's
yeah. I had forced to watch that in high school in my freshman year, and I don't know if I've watched it since.
It is an interesting movie. It really, artistic choices on that were quite interesting. All right, so let's move on to our second discussion item, and this is something I've been working on. I'm working on an article for filmforfans.com on this, but I thought we'd discuss it and bat it around a little bit, and that is the best movie monologues. Or we could call it our favorite movie monologues, because it's not like either one of us are going to go back through the entire history of film to try and ascertain which ones are absolutely the best. We're going to pick our favorites and call it the best. So yeah, but I've been doing a lot of looking into this, a lot of research on it, watching a lot of different monologues, and so I thought we'd talk about a few of our favorites. So yeah, let's get started. So Rob, what do you got?
So we had mentioned Leonardo DiCaprio recently, as we talked about him for the last 5 minutes. But in Shutter Island, at the end of there's many good points in the movie where he has parts where he's talking, but the very end of the movie is my favorite part, and it's just haunting. And like I said, I won't give away exactly what happens, but I just watched the scene again right before we recorded, and it hits me every time emotionally, because you see this guy who they're hoping he has things figured out, and he doesn't have things figured out, and it's going to change his life forever. And he's sitting there with his fellow cop, and he says to him, it's got me thinking, what would be worse, to live as a monster or to die as a good man? And it's just such a powerful quote.
Mm-hmm.
In the context of the movie, it's a stunning quote for him to say. And it's really heartbreaking because of what's happening around him and in the scene. And he delivers it so perfectly. Like, this guy he wants to be okay, and he knows something is wrong and he can't figure it out.
Yeah.
And, he's at the point where he's just wondering, like, is it even worth it? Like, is it even worth me to continue if I'm just going to be a monster? Or should I go out, as a good man? So Shutter Island is definitely near the top of the list for me when it comes to that. It's fun. The one I talk about later too is actually at the end of a movie. So it's funny how a lot of times these monologues can be at the end of a movie, wrapping things up and giving us some closure to the story.
Yeah. Well, along those same lines, near the end of the one that I'm going to start out with is near the end of a movie too. And this is, of course, the epic James Earl Jones monologue at the end of Field of Dreams. I love this. It's inspirational. It's visionary. It's classic James Earl Jones. It's so good. Right when, the baseball players are there, they're about to lose their farm. The brother-in-law is like ranting at them. What are you doing? What are you doing? You have no money. You're going to lose your house. And then James Earl Jones steps up. And this is where, I've got some of his lines. It's so great. He's like, and they'll walk out onto the bleachers and they'll sit in their shirt sleeves on a perfect afternoon. And they'll find that they have reserved seats somewhere along one of the baselines where they sat when they were children and cheered their heroes. And they'll watch the game as if they'd been dipped themselves in magic waters. The memories will be so thick, they'll have to brush them away from their faces. People will come, Ray. People will most definitely come. It's so good. It's the culmination of everything that Field of Dreams is, wrapped up, of course, with his booming, echoing voice. It's great.
Yeah, if you build it, they will come.
Yeah, I love it. So.
Yeah, another one I was thinking of was The Shawshank Redemption, which is, I mentioned Shutter Island is probably my second favorite movie of all time. The Shawshank Redemption is my favorite movie of all time, and I would say it's by a lot my favorite movie of all time. I just think Tim Robbins, Morgan Freeman, like were the absolute perfect casting for this movie.
Yeah.
Everything about the movie, the way it's shot, the music, the story. I mean, Stephen King wrote a great short story that was the basis of this, but then they took it and made it something else entirely. But I love the monologue at the end of the movie because it ties back into earlier in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
When Tim Robbins says to Morgan Freeman's character, well, it comes down to one thing, really. Get busy living, get busy dying. And then at the end of the movie, Morgan Freeman's character is out of prison. And he says, get busy living or get busy dying. Yeah, that's right. And goes into this short speech about how he's really excited about being able to go see his friend Andy, and how he hopes he'll make it over the border, and how he hopes he'll get to Mexico. And he says, I hope the ocean is as blue as it is in my dreams. I hope I get to see my friend. I hope. And that's really the whole impetus of the movie, is summed up in those two words, I hope.
Yeah.
Because as Andy says in the beginning, get busy living or get busy dying. When that happens in the movie, Red thinks that he's telling him, I'm giving up. I can't take it anymore. I'm quitting. I can't live, so I'm just gonna give up. But really what he was doing was digging his own secret tunnel out of the prison and spending years and years on it. And it was all built around the idea of hope that someday it would work out, someday he'd be free. And to see them both free as they see each other on the beach after they both finally made it is always an emotional moment for me. And the monologue there at the end that Morgan Freeman delivers is perfect and apt for what's going on in the scene.
Yeah. And Shawshank Redemption is so good. There's actually a slightly earlier monologue from Morgan Freeman that also could be on the list. The one where he's sitting there in the parole board hearing. That's a fantastic monologue too. So good. Yeah. Yeah. He kind of narrates the story in some ways. And there's no way around how fantastic a movie it is. And so rightfully it ends with that fantastic note. So the second one I thought I'd talk about is not at the end of a movie. It's from Good Will Hunting, and it's Robin Williams, the scene where he's sitting on the park bench with Matt Damon. And it was right after their first session. It was their second session. And in the first session, Matt Damon had just absolutely ripped into Robin Williams. He looked at a painting of his and just like tore his life apart. And Robin Williams was so ticked off at him. And so then he takes him out to this park bench and he starts out this sequence where he says like, you know, I was up all night thinking about what you were saying about me. And then a thought occurred to me and I went to sleep peacefully and haven't thought about you since. And so he goes on to tell him, and he starts outlining the differences, because in the movie, Matt Damon is this incredibly brilliant person who has an eidetic memory, who can memorize anything, who's just the smartest guy you've ever encountered. And Robin Williams comes back at him and he starts in on the differences between what you can learn and what you've experienced. And so a little bit of that, he says, I asked you about war and you'd probably throw Shakespeare at me, right? You know, once more under the breach, dear friends, but you've never been near one, and you've never held your best friend's head in your lap and watched him gasp his last breath, looking to you for help. And if I asked you about love, you'd probably quote me a sonnet, but you've never looked at a woman and been totally vulnerable, known that someone could level you with her eyes. And it's just such a brilliant change of turnaround on him. That difference between lived experience and read knowledge. And it just encapsulates the difference between these two characters at that point. And up until this point, nobody has been able to get anything over on Matt Damon's character. They show him earlier in the movie, like arguing legal precedents with the judges from like 18th century law. And all of a sudden, here's this counselor sitting out there who just absolutely gets him and gets underneath him for the first time ever. And it's just such an incredible monologue. Robin Williams was so good in that movie.
Yeah, it's the it's not your fault scene also comes to mind when you're thinking about powerful moments. I think, broadly speaking, if we can zoom out for a second just about monologues.
Yeah.
I think it's such a difficult art in movies, because in movies we're expecting things to transition, we're expecting things to move, we're expecting like things to cut, for motion to be continued on. We don't like boring, drawn out sequences. So I think movies have a challenge that's a lot different than a theater experience, performance like Shakespeare kind of theater. Performance, because with that you're stuck in one location and you're basically relying on the actors to provide you with everything. When you're watching a movie, you've got the setting, you've got the way this film is shot, you've got all kinds of special effects going on, so there's not as much space for these moments to breathe. So I think one of the reasons why they resonate with us when they're done well is because it's not easy. And I think the ones that are done well feel like they were always supposed to be done that way. And I don't know what the formula is for that. It's just there are moments in certain movies where everything lines up and you know it was supposed to happen that way.
Yeah, and I think you're right in that. And one of the hardest things about a monologue is there's usually a flow to it. There's usually a change of emotion because they're long enough that you're not going on one particular emotion. There's usually some kind of a building or some kind of a emotional letdown. So you're having to recite your lines in such a way where you're escalating or de-escalating emotion, where you're having to go through multiple emotional states and to carry things. And to be able to do that requires a tremendous amount of acting. I mean, I do a lot of public speaking as part of my job, and that's one of the most difficult things to do is to carry your emotion and to know when to go in heavy and when to back it down and how to do that properly. And so a good monologue always has that in it, that element to it. Yeah. And there are various different, and in researching this, there are various different, purposes for monologues. Of course, one of my favorite is the rant, where you get the long rant monologue. I'm thinking of like Jack Nicholson in A Few Good Men, where he just goes off. That's probably going to be on my list too.
Samuel L. Jackson in Pulp Fiction does the same thing.
Samuel L. Jackson, Pulp Fiction, and then you have the more like expository ones. Like I'm thinking of Morpheus from The Matrix, the whole red pill, blue pill monologue, where he's basically trying to explain to him what the Matrix is at the point where nobody knows what the Matrix is. And it kind of sets, it's expositional. It kind of sets the stage for the drama that is to come. So doing that really well is hard. All right, so definitely make sure you check out filmforfans.com in the coming days. Is that article will go up with my favorite monologues on it. We got a lot of good content on filmforfans.com, so make sure you're checking that out on a regular basis. All right, Rob, you ready for the watch list?
Let's talk about what we saw with our eyeballs.
Yes, all right. All right. So I started out with some John Krasinski movies. I really, really love this guy as a director. I want him to do a lot more movies. He has a unique take and a unique visual take on movies, and I love it. So I'm talking about, I watched Oblivion, it's another Tom Cruise movie, and Tron Legacy, both of which were directed by John Krasinski. And he kind of encapsulate that modern minimalist, but very visually striking, big grand landscape type settings in films. I mean, even 10 years later, Tron Legacy, the world he created is just so visually stunning. It is just absolutely incredible. I mean, it's still to this day the best 3D movie I've ever seen in IMAX. I mean, it was quite an experience, and even to this day, it holds up. The movie is great from beginning to end. And with Oblivion, I think one of the things I love about Oblivion is, in keeping with Krasinski's like minimalist standard, is it is a post-apocalyptic world that is not cluttered. One of the things you see with most post-apocalyptic type things is there's just junk everywhere. There's just things all over the place. It's just chaos, it's all this stuff. And with him, he chose to do it very, very differently. It still feels post-apocalyptic, but it's very minimalist. And it's very striking. So when you see something, it means something, it matters. And it's just a fantastic sci-fi movie.
Yeah, when I think about Oblivion, I think of like the word, you said bleak, and I think of the word stark. That is just like they're in this outpost basically, and there's nothing around them whatsoever. Yeah. And I really contrasted with eventually they find other people and what their situation is. Like kind of a pristine versus reality situation in that movie.
Yeah.
So I watched right before the podcast, we like to watch movies with our kids, so we watched Mulan,
Hmm.
the original animated version, not the
Okay.
version we won't talk about that came out last year. But my kids love that movie. I love that movie. My wife loves that movie. So um, it's really funny seeing the talking donkey from Shrek as a dragon. A little younger voiced dragon Mushu there.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's a funny movie. It's heartfelt, great music. I think I have the song "Be a Man" memorized or close,
Hmm.
and sing it every time it comes on when we're watching the movie. And I'm a 38-year-old man, so deal with it. Like I just love it. And yeah, we watched Mulan. We've been watching a lot of movies of similar ilk with a 10 and 6-year-old. So that's just gonna happen. And I happen to really like animated movies, so it works out for me.
Nice.
And on a completely different note, we also have not quite finished. We'll finish tonight, I think. But we've been watching The Mummy with
Hmm.
Brendan Fraser, the
Okay.
1996 version of The Mummy, and I have never seen it somehow. So this is my first time seeing it, and I think we got about 20 or 30 minutes left, so I'm not quite at the end. So no spoilers, please. But seeing Brendan Fraser in like his glory when he was like this up and coming star, you can feel in his performance like the ability and the reason why he was such a popular choice. And I think that a lot of unfortunate circumstances around some of the movies that he was in took him out of that, which is disappointing because I think he's talented.
Yeah.
But he definitely brought life to the role. Whether it's a good movie or not is up for debate, but he definitely did well. And Rachel Weisz also is really good in that movie, and I like her in every movie she's in. So I'm biased when it comes to that. And it's funny seeing her in that because we just watched Born Legacy and she was in that too. So like much younger Rachel Weisz. Yeah, we watched those, and when I guess I'll just skip ahead since I just talked about it. For me, and then you can talk about what you watched.
Sure.
Coming up this week, I'm planning on watching The Mummy Returns and The Scorpion King because they're also both on HBO, which is where we're watching the first Mummies. And I don't think I've seen any of those three movies, so it'll be fun. I can't wait to see The Rock as a mythical half man, half whatever scorpion. I don't know. I don't really know what the movie is other than it's Dwayne Johnson with long hair. So let's go.
What I remember about that series was I was working at the movie theater when I forget which one The Rock made his debut in. And maybe it was the second one, The Mummy 2, Mummy Returns.
I think The Mummy Returns is the second one.
But I remember like this was a big deal. It was one of his first acting roles. And everyone was stoked to see him. And then the amount of time he's in the theater or he's in the movie is really, really minimal. You'll have to see when you watch it, but it was billed as, hey, The Rock is coming to movies. And people were actually, I remember people leaving the theater visibly upset about the amount of time The Rock was in the movie. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, oh my goodness, like he's a wrestler. Like, who cares? Yeah. But the demand was so popular. That's why the Scorpion King existed, because like, okay, well, if this is what people want, let's make a movie. And all of a sudden now, it makes sense because The Rock is one of the highest paid movie stars in the country.
Yep.
But that's my memory, is like people being visibly upset coming out of the theater about the lack of Rock time.
Need my Rock time.
Yeah. So for me coming up this week, I'm going to watch The Lincoln Lawyer. I have been reading the Michael Connelly books. I finished the Harry Bosch series, and I started in on the Lincoln Lawyer books from Michael Connelly. So I finished The Lincoln Lawyer today. So the plan is to watch the movie with Matthew McConaughey. So I'm going to do that. And I still haven't gotten, I kind of started watching The Little Things again to get that going, but it was a little late in the evening. I was like, I don't feel like I'm not in the mood to pay attention close enough. So I turned that off. So I'm planning on kind of getting back to The Little Things and watch that one again.
Awesome.
So anything else you got, Rob?
I don't think so. I'm gonna fire up the last half an hour of The Mummy. See
All
what
right.
happens to the mummy.
Go for it. All right. Well, that is the show, everyone. So thank you for hanging out with us. And remember to give us some love, rate and subscribe, share with your friends. We'd love to hear from you too. So if you have any of your favorite monologues for movies that you'd like us to talk about, maybe we can get to that. So send us some comments on that, and let us know. We got a YouTube channel. If you actually want to see us interact with each other, check out our YouTube channel and visit filmforfans.com for the best monologues, as well as a lot of other content. We put out a romance movies that everyone might like over the weekend, so you can check that out, as well as what to watch on various streaming services and reviews of that kind. So make sure you visit filmforfans.com. Until next time, enjoy the movies.
Get your popcorn ready.